pretty far away, you might have disconnection between it and the radio. So those are some considerations when you initially are setting up for any flight demo or doing any stuff. From here, we're going to go ahead and put the aircraft together. So the fish itself, fairly simple to kind of set up. Batteries there's two sets of batteries that come with the combo, so you would end up with the ground station, the base station, the antennas, the tripod, two sets of batteries, and your aircraft, and selected payload. They only come in combos of the payloads with it. So if your customer wants more than one payload, you'd have to buy that separately, but you would buy it as a combo for that. So when you talk to them between a T3 and L20T, whatever their cases are, you want to make sure that they understand what the payload is so that they can make a decision on what would be the best for them. So some people say, I don't need the Z2, I don't need the laser rangefinder, we offer the T3. Assembled correctly, and one of the things here is that we're just making sure that there's no like foam pieces that get stuck in here. We don't want to disconnect for any reason during the flight. So I'm usually checking the back of the aircraft to make sure there's no junk in there, and as well here on the connection so there's no small debris. Because the foam can indeed come flaking apart a little bit. So you might see it stuck to the like this right here. So anything like that inside can disrupt the connection. So we want to be careful with that. When we put the tail on, it's a simple snap, but then I'm checking to make sure that the actual the buttons, yeah, because if it's not, you can still put it on. It's fully engaged, and as well it's flush on both sides. Oh, there we go. All right. Save me a trip. So go ahead and come on this side. So the wings themselves, they are heavy enough that when you put one on, one might fall down. I'll do a little trick of grabbing the piece of foam for the payload, sticking it on the wing if I'm by myself, just so it isn't dragging in the dirt or getting more debris or picking up things. Another thing to remember, these are magnets inside. So in some places we fly, you can get small pieces of metal or something like that. So try not to drag it on the ground. It's pretty important when you assemble. If you have two people, it's much easier. Go ahead and make sure that that doesn't happen and you're not dragging it on the ground. One of the nice safety features on the Dragonfish when you're attaching the wing is that if you're not engaged correctly, this does not sit flush. So the link here is not even in its position, it's in its stowage position, so it's not going to sit flush. If you then flip it over, but don't link it, it will not sit flush. So that's a very important thing, that only when you actually clamp it correctly and it's engaged correctly will that cover sit flush. Another one that's a semi-problem is that, again, this bends really easy. It's just a piece of aluminum. So you're not trying to force this. It's just a cover. It has nothing to do with the actual integrity of the aircraft. The most important thing is to make sure the latch is connected right. But it has nothing to do with the integrity of if it gets bent or it's not quite right. But if it gets bent and it's sitting up, you can kind of bend it. The payload sits pretty low. And then when I was flying with Karim in the UK, we're out in a grassy area. If the payload can't do its normal calibration, of course, that's a problem, right? So it'll fall. So when you even select where you're going to put the fish, you need to have a very flat area, landing pad, cement pad, somewhere that the gimbal can move. And then as well, if it comes back to land, before I turn it on, I'm not giving that a lot of twist because you don't want to strip the servo gears. So just making sure that they're smooth and move smooth. Again, final check on my payload. I'll still check my wing. Who put my wing on? Make sure the wing is good and the tail is good. It's solid that I actually have in my UI connection between me and it. Another thing that can happen is I got a little weight on me. So if I'm blocking this, right, standing there, that can also create a disconnection. Any airplane. It's an airplane. As an airplane, it can get pushed around a little bit. Also, when you go into transition, very important that you don't do that downwind. Why is that important? You're going downwind for the transition, not upwind, downwind. You can stall a little bit. Now you're hoping that the engineers did a fantastic job to recover the aircraft fast enough to keep it lifted, but it's a wing. So the wing going into the wind is definitely more better than a wing going downwind, just so that you can generate that lift, right? Any questions? Good? All right. So we have an initial flight check. I went ahead and did my manual flight check, but into the corners we're going to basically, I'm getting into manual mode here. So, we're going to come into the corners and it'll give us a automatic generator.
Sorry, the airspeed, we should calibrate.
You don't always have to, unless it tells you to calibrate. I usually don't do it. However, when it initializes, if you're pointing into the wind, it can get a little disruption of that initial power up and zeroing out. But not always does that. Is that the case?
So the more wind we have to calibrate.
Not have to, but if it doesn't pass that, what just happened there, and it didn't pass it, then I would calibrate it.
Okay.
Yeah. Instead of just doing it to do it, it's like doing compass calibrations when people don't need to.
Yes.
They just do it.
Yes.
And I'm like, nah, you don't need to do it unless it tells you.
Okay.
So airspeed is the same.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions before we take off? Maybe the next time. All right. It's a big ass drone, so don't get in its way. All right, into the corners.
You have fun in it, right?
There is a place, if you drive 1.5 hours, they have a small hill with a bit of mountain biking show.
So we're going to get 100 meters just to give us some altitude and make sure we're not near anything. One thing to consider. So I'm going to back her up and start dropping altitude just like a normal drone. Again, this descent is much slower when you're doing it manually. You could, but the logic is different when you don't set it up on mission. I'll explain that.